Welcome to everyone. I'd like to call the Equity Commission's second, I hear the echo. Equity Commission's second community listening session to order. Can you hear me okay? Welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually today, taking your Saturday afternoon to participate in this effort. We're delighted to be here, and I would like to introduce my fellow commissioners who are present. To my far left, Kim Sauer. Next to Kim is Annie Clay. To my immediate left is Cliff Brown, and to my right is John Hedgewood. A couple of our commissioners could not join us today, and they are Elena's Blackburn, our youth commissioner, Makita Hart, and Christine Stahlberg. So we appreciate those of you who are on the audience, are online and joining us virtually here today. And we welcome those of you who are here physically in the audience to join us. We so appreciate your interest in the work of the Equity Commission. And as we began to look at our work plan, as we began to look at our strategic planning process, we wanted to have the benefit of input from the public. And we've prepared some questions that we specifically wanted to have addressed. And I'd like to upfront thank the Lacey City staff people who assist us in this effort. Our primary staff person being Shannon, assisted by Kelly. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in the background we don't know about. But we are delighted that Shannon Kelly Fong is our primary person, our assistant city manager. We came about this portion of the process by realizing that we are living in some trying times in this country. And Lacey is attempting to be a part of future activity going forward. And those of us serving on the Equity Commission are pleased to be able to volunteer our time and energy in this capacity. And we are an advisory group to the City Council, and we have several key tasks in front of us. And that's to help the council in creating a more welcoming community for all of the residents. We want to help in continuing to create critical conversations on race and equity. We want to see an increase in the involvement from underrepresented community members, because that's part of the community and this nation's history. And then we want to help identify those barriers that need to be removed that might prevent full participation in government and in helping to design public policy. So we're here today as a second session. Our first session was Monday evening. And even though we were weather impacted, we had a very good session, both in person and online. And today's afternoon session on a Saturday afternoon was our attempt to offer options to the public so that we could maximize participation as much as we possibly could. We would like to hear from those of you that are online, and we will be looking for hands that are trying to interact as the questions are asked and as we are getting response. In addition to the live session, the online session, the city's website has the same questions on it that you can complete and mail in to us. And there's also a telephone option. So we're trying to make sure that every possible option at our current disposal we are making use of so that we can maximize participation and input. And we will be evaluating even these options. What else could we have done? What should we do differently in the future because this is just a beginning, and there will be other opportunities for the Equity Commission to interact with members of the public in various ways as we go along with our work. So between the options currently available and potential options in the future, hopefully anyone with any thoughts, issues, concerns concerning the work of the commission, we hope you avail yourselves of one of those so that we have the benefit of your participation. So with the questions that we have prepared, the various commissioners are going to ask those questions, and we'll enter into dialogue, either here in person, online, or possibly among ourselves. We were pleased with the 70-some-odd people that did tune in, that the record could show that even though we didn't see them and they weren't here, they did participate. So hopefully the same will be true for this afternoon session. So with that, Shannon, is there anything else I should mention before we get started?
Chair Jackson, I would just add, you went through all of, we have the sessions today, and that we also have the online survey. In addition, we have hard copies available at City Hall, so please feel free to stop by City Hall anytime between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and you can pick up a hard copy of the survey, and we'll have those available, just like the online version, until the end of December.
Thank you. With that, let us move into our first question, and that is going to be facilitated by Commissioner Hedgewood.
How can we create a more welcoming community? Would any of our attendees that are attending virtually care to weigh in on this question for us? We are eager for your input.
We have 2 microphones here in the room. For those of you physically present, those will pick up the recording, and it will be broadcast to those online.
Also, just to mention for those attending virtually, if you raise your hand on Zoom, you will be admitted as a panelist to provide input.
Are there any hands appearing, Kelly? May I inquire as to how many people? I can't quite see. Is that 2?
We currently have 2, Chair Jackson.
We currently have 2. Yes, Shannon.
Chair Jackson, given the limited number of attendees online, I would recommend to this body to perhaps open it up to all of the questions to see if individuals want to speak to any of the items that are available per question this afternoon.
Good. So we have 2 joining us virtually, as well as those in the room, and then the equity commissioners themselves. So that first question was, how can we create a more welcoming community? And neither of our 2 people online indicated they wanted to respond to that. Is there any response from those physically attending with us today? And we do have a couple of our city council people present. They have all kinds of opportunities to ask themselves that question. After Monday night's session, are there any thoughts from any commissioners on this particular question? Anything we heard, anything we read from the comments that were posted? How can we create a more welcoming community?
Chair Jackson, if I may, on Monday, it was shared that Lacey does a lot of things really well as it pertains to welcoming new residents to the community. And there was an example of how a military family was looking for a community to join. And as they looked around, based on a referral, they came to Lacey. And when they exited the highway there at exit 111, they saw this family statue. And that resonated with them. And as a result, they determined that this is a great community to join. And so I thought that was very powerful, that symbol caused someone to make a decision to join the community. I've been here for 30 years now, and I too was military and was referred to the city of Lacey to live. It was really growing back then. It was young and growing. And so I found, a neighborhood that I moved into and been in the same neighborhood and watched all of the development and growth around. And so I would say that, Lacey's doing a lot of, really good things as far as welcoming new residents to the community. But there are some other things I think they can look at, maybe having some type of communication set up with JBLM, if they don't already, to where when a new family has orders to come to JBLM, maybe communications to that family as they're beginning to move here includes some information on the city of Lacey and on the various communities, maybe the communities and the housing and the levels of housing that's available to them. I think that would be very helpful as they are looking, for a place to live. That's just one item. Thank you.
And along those same lines, because Lacey is such a diverse community, more so than the surrounding cities in the county, I've lived here 50 years now, and I still find an awful lot of people out of Lacey who find it almost unbelievable that there is a community of black people in Lacey. You live in Lacey, how long you been down there? And it's like, oh, woe be unto you kind of thing. And so for this JBLM community, state government, federal government, and all of these other entities around, the diversity of Lacey and its growth management area is not known outside of Thurston County. And I don't think it's known that much in other parts of the county. My years with the North Thurston School District, the growth I've seen in the students of color, people are surprised to learn that the North Thurston School District is a majority minority school district now, that there are more students of color in the district than there are non-students of color. And they think in terms of Tacoma and Seattle and Renton and Kent, but right here in Lacey, people looking for communities to settle in, quite often the diversity factor is key for them. And so as we move forward and we talk about an equity commission, wanting the community to be more equitable in its welcoming to people, that's something we can really be proud about and talk about the positive aspects of diversity and the equity that goes with it. So Cliff raises a very good point, and the person who made that comment made a very good point, because not all people coming into Lacey and Thurston County are affiliated with the military. And they're surprised. They're surprised when they learn about the diversity of the community. So it's a plus for Lacey, and not all of the diversity is in Lacey, but it is by far the most diverse of the other cities in the county. So that is a good point, and to keep that in mind as we talk about how do we make sure we are a more welcoming community as the population continues to diversify. Any other comments from any of the commissioners before we acknowledge these other questions? So if someone who's joining us virtually wants to address any of them, as Shannon suggested, can do so.
I wanted to say that there was a comment about land acknowledgement, that to have that in the beginning of meetings would be feel welcoming to our indigenous population, and that people spoke about the necessity to, or the desire to see that diversity reflected in our police force, in our the staff members, the people that City of Lacey employees that we come in contact with, and then I also think that the artwork, like you said, statues, maybe murals, something that really reflected more the diversity that we really do have already. Thank you.
So Chair Jackson, adding to that, friend of mine who is very, wanted me to relate this message is that it'll be great to have some sort of a, location where community members can get together. We have libraries or different areas, but we don't really have place where you can go and meet and commingle and get to know without so much restrictions. Like you have to have certain hours, or it's just that's kind of preventing people to get together. So she really wanted me to relate this message. Hey, it'll be great to have some area where we can get together, especially people with similar cultural background, where they can meet and network. And so it's just nice to have that kind of a community center of some kind to do that.
Any other comments on this first question? Seeing or hearing none, then the second question will be facilitated by Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. The second question today is, what concerns do you have about racism and inequity in the community? What concerns do you have about racism and inequity in the community?
Either hand up for our two virtual attendees. Seeing neither, Commissioners, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I would just like to comment that as I joined this commission, there are things in the back of my mind that I wanted to really, investigate and learn more about as it pertains to some of the practices in the city of Lacey. And so I'm very interested in the police department and the fire department and their hiring practices, and what do they have as far as policies on working toward increasing the diverse members of on the police force and the fire department. So that's one thing that I have in the back of my mind. Also, other departments, as we take a look at it, take a look at the leadership and the structure and see how much diversity we have and what is in place to increase diversity in certain departments in the city.
Shannon?
Chair Jackson, just a real quick point of clarification that while the city has the Lacey Police Department, the fire department is actually Lacey Fire District 3, so it's outside of the city of Lacey.
One of the virtual participants on Monday evening talked about the fact that he is interested in getting involved in various aspects of the city, and was sharing with us the difficulties he had encountered, and feeling qualified and educated and willing to volunteer and step forward. He had not been able to penetrate whatever barrier that he had encountered. So when we look at not only question number one, but this number two question about racism and inequity in the community, might there be some barriers that are there that we haven't really explored or haven't identified? As the community continues to grow, as the population continues to diversify, we're in the mix in this country right now, and the issues of racism and inequities are very strong among us. There's no getting around the conversations happening, radio, TV, social media. There's no getting around it. And so what are some of those issues about racism and inequity? And one of the things about historical underrepresented communities, there's been a hesitancy to step forward and to raise issues around these two areas. And so one of the tough jobs we'll have as an Equity Commission is how do we accommodate, how do we facilitate helping our community realize that if there are issues out there, what's the best mechanism and the safest mechanism to make it known? They can't be addressed if they aren't known. And so as we get the various data from the various departments and the presentations and the demographic profiles, we'll get some things. And we as individuals have individual experiences. Like I said, I've been here 50 years. My experiences are going to be different than someone that's only been here 5 years or 1 year. And so we've got to become visibly accessible, you know, to know that we're equity commissioners and can be approached and can be called and can be talked to if that's a safer way to funnel concerns and issues about racism and inequity. So we've got to be creative, and we've got to, you know, do the best we can to get the message out there that we want to know what are the concerns in the community. Because as we begin to craft our plan of work and our elements of the strategic plan for the city of Lacey, if we don't know what those things are, we can't make recommendations to make changes in them. And so we don't want it to just be limited to the experiences we bring to the situation. And we're growing in leaps and bounds as a community, and it's not just the city of Lacey per se, but the whole growth management area that surrounds it. So the work before us to get the honest message out there that we want to know if you are encountering some challenges, some difficulties, some barriers, where are they? What's the nature of them? And how can we help facilitate finding some resolution to those things so that the community can continue to grow and have a positive aspect about it? So a lot of that falls on us as we work in advisory to the city council. And the constituents that we represent, we have to convince them that, you know, this is an okay thing for you to share with us about. And with that process, hopefully, we can get the kind of dialogue going that we know we need in the community. Just because we didn't see street protests and we didn't see a lot of the things City of Olympia experienced doesn't mean that there aren't some issues and some problems, and we can't conclude that that's not the case. But we've got to find a way to help people feel comfortable in helping us to expand our personal knowledge as well as the community knowledge of just what's going on. And we can talk about the physical presence of the city workforce, a police department, a fire department, or whatever, reflecting the diversity of the community. But what does that mean when it translates into policy, when it translates into practices and procedures used by city government? What will be the mechanism whereby we make whatever change we think needs to be recommended to be made? So it's just a beginning, but it is a beginning, and it's an important beginning. And the more we could put those things in place, the better off we're going to be as a commission, the better off the city is going to be as a growing municipality, and the better off the community is going to be. But there has to be a feeling of safety, comfort, and welcoming to come forward to identify whatever those issues or concerns are. And so I just want to make sure we don't interpret the lack of a long list of concerns to say there are no concerns. So we just have to change the mechanism whereby we hear what those concerns are all about. We don't want to manufacture concerns if they aren't there, but at the same time, we want to acknowledge and recognize them and help people work through them so that we can all coexist amicably in this community that we all love. So that's kind of a diatribe on my part today. I'm sorry, I held back on Monday night. But this is the crust of the work that we've all signed up for and the work that the city has asked us to do. And so this number 2 question is critical. There are a lot of things we can talk about, and this number 2 question is the most difficult to talk about, racism and inequity in the community. But we've got to find a way. We've got to find a way. So, any other comments from the commissioners on that number 2? Shannon, yes.
Chair Jackson, I just have a comment on, some of the items that you brought up. And, I just want to reiterate that this is just a start. And we did have a fairly quick turnaround, but we have a lot of opportunities to grow and learn from what we did for these engagement sessions. And then, like you said, be creative and find, solutions to create a supportive environment moving forward. And so this is helpful in, taking those first steps, as this was the first community engagement session that this body has held. And we certainly, and I'm speaking on behalf of the city here, we have work to do to find out what those creative solutions are and how to reach people. A couple of members brought up on Monday, the idea of having focus groups and how to hold engagement and outreach in the community. And we have a meeting on Monday, this upcoming Monday on the 22nd, and as part of that meeting, we'll certainly be talking about the community engagement sessions that we're holding today and as well as on Monday, and just, again, taking this as that first step, that first start, and seeing how we can build off of that momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on question number 2 before we move on? Annie? Do I see you? Okay. I want to make sure to look to my right so I'm not ignoring you, John. Number 3 then, and Commissioner Clay is going to facilitate that.
So our question number 3 is, how could we increase participation from underrepresented community members? And this, as the commission, we're committed to hearing from everybody, from all the voices. We want all the voices to be at the table, and that's why these critical conversations are important. And I think it is a matter of gaining that trust, really building the view of us as the commission, that we are really here to do some work, and slowly make those connections with different people in the community so that we can get a broad and effective action plan here. So help us out here if you have other ideas about how we can increase our participation in this way, in other forums, any kind of brainstormed idea.
I see no hands on our 2 participants that's joining us virtually. How about commissioners? Any comments on that particular question?
I would just like to share that on Monday, one of the takeaways was that we should really, put a great effort into identifying organizations, small groups, clubs, and be able to communicate with them information regarding the city, regarding what the Equity Commission is doing, solicit them to participate in events like this, to get their input and feedback on things that we can do here in Lacey along these lines. So we did, in fact, get some feedback with a list of groups and organizations that we can reach out to in the future, and I think it would be great if we can just grow that. Because, I think it was referred to as, was it organization within organization or clubs within a club? That was some term that was coined here on Monday that I think is a great, and we should dig a level lower to identify those smaller groups that are key in the community. Thank you.
I think we've talked about within the commission about gathering focus groups where we can target some, get some leaders in our community to gather their circle of people for small conversations as we go along. We're creating our structure to go back to the community over and over again.
So I totally agree with what Commissioner Clay and Brown said. So yeah, coming from the immigrant background, that a lot of comments that I hear is even to approaching local government, state government, knowing that there will be nobody there to understand you, that you don't really expect to grab a call and just ask a question. Because then, there's nobody there to understand what you're going to say, and you don't really relate. So they'll turn to someone else, like your friends and, the people that you know of. A lot of time, I see that it's very unfortunate. If you just got the information from the source, there are a lot of things could have been a lot better. So we do have that kind of a problem as well. So what you just identified, just really reaching them out and giving them that kind of a resource and help is really vital to bring them in so that they get the same type of information like everybody else. But I think it's also important to know what's preventing them, right? So without the civic process, understanding how things works here, we're not really talking about the same thing. You're trying to communicate, give simple information, but it's not all that simple if you don't have that understanding, if you don't have that same background. So I believe that having sort of a community liaison who can interpret that information and then relate to the community members would be a really good way to also reach kind of underrepresented population, mainly because we don't speak the same thing. It's not just a language issue, it's other cultural issue, different understanding, different history, just a lot of those issues. So earlier we were talking about having it just a different way, try to figure out what's the best way to do it. Yeah, we can't stop there. We need to be more out of the box and listening. So that's what I wanted to add.
And when I talked Monday night about communities within a community, because we have some identifiable cultural and racial groups, those are communities within communities, communication mechanisms, newsletters. Where do people worship if they are worshipers? What are the churches? How does information spread around? And to identify what those communities within the community are, who are those key decision makers, key communicators, and how can those mechanisms be put into place so that we can make sure it becomes as equitable as possible. And people live in silos. People gravitate to other people they're comfortable with and can be understood by and share cultural perspectives. And so we have to figure out a way to penetrate those sub-level kind of differences as we're trying to bring everyone forward to the main effort here in the city. So we'll be working on trying to identify what that is. We talked about the focus groups. If in a smaller focus group setting with translators or language interpreters will help us get at something, so be it. And what mechanism works for one group doesn't necessarily work for the next. So we aren't talking about equal so much as we are equitable. What's going to be equitable to make sure we can get to everyone's issues and concerns as it relates to what's going on in the city as we're trying to make it more inclusive for everybody. So we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to move forward in that regard. So with that, let's move to question 4, and Commissioner Sauer is going to facilitate that.
Okay, so number 4 question is, what barriers have you seen or experienced in participating in decisions that impact the community? I think we kind of talked about quite a bit about that, in prior questions. So I don't know how much we think about cost of, living in a society that's not so inclusive. Even at workplace, if you are kind of worried about your safety in a way, that you're not truly belonging workplace or even in community, you spend a lot of your energy into worrying about your safety rather than being innovative or being, contributing for the more of a progress that you can make. So I think it's really important to create that inclusivity. It really does good, everyone good. And I'm surprised and inspired by many immigrant stories where people just bring such a great strength and diversity. And a lot of times, some of those are kind of overlooked, mainly because it's not been told unless you are like very extremely successful or something. You don't really hear too much. But every individual have their strength, and that's what that inclusivity will do, I think. Those will bring those strengths together, and it really brings to the overall good for everybody. So just wanted to point that out, the reasons why we need to be inclusive. I mean, one of the many reasons.
Any other comments from any other commissioner?
I would just like to share some of the feedback that we received last week as well. One of the commenters that was here in person mentioned that a lot of the advertisements from the city, even when they're in print, still kind of push the reader towards an online website or some other form of technology that perhaps not every household has. Her suggestion was perhaps being more explanatory or more thorough in print, rather than solely relying on a quick snippet and then an HTML link to a website for more information or something like that. And so that will allow those that might have a barrier of technology at home to also participate in what we're doing here and with what the city has to offer. Just to echo back with what we heard there.
Then as we are looking at the mechanisms currently in place that are used to invite people to participate in the public process, how much of that is business as usual? How much of that are methodologies that's been used, forever, without stopping to evaluate or analyze, is it being effective? And are people being reached that we want to reach? And so that's part of it as well. The technology is an issue. Language barriers are an issue. Underrepresented communities, for the most part, and generally speaking, don't have a good trust of government, don't believe that their input will matter, don't believe that the points of view will be listened to or considered. And so that's just the way it is. So if that's the way it is, what do we do to overcome those perceptions if we truly want engagement and involvement? And that's a tough challenge, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge. And either we can continue to go forward in the way we've been doing it, an article in the paper that such and such a commission is now being formed. If you're interested, write this letter or whatever. And it will never diversify in that way. It will never represent the people in the community. We don't abandon that, but what additionally can we do in order to get information out and get the message out that your input is wanted, that your volunteerism is needed, that your expertise and your knowledge and your skill set is desired. And somehow we've got to do a better job of getting that message out to underrepresented people in the community. Those of us who's been around here for years, we know how to access that stuff. We know who to call. We know whose number. But that's not the case for most people. So we have to figure out a way to do a better job of that if we want a different kind of level of involvement. And different people experience different barriers, and one person's barriers and another person's barrier. So it's a continuous, ongoing effort on everybody's part, I think, to really come to that. So any other comment on question 4? And as we move through the remaining questions, we've touched upon some of this already, but sometimes it's worth repeating. And Commissioner Brown, as you take us into question 5, what's left to say about that? What else can we say about that?
Okay. So the question 5 is, did you experience any barriers to your participation today? And that is where we really want to know if there anything else we could have done to make it easier for you to participate, or if there are any hurdles you had to overcome in order to be able to participate today, be it language issues, be it accessibility issues, be it internet or broadband issues. We're interested in hearing from you along those lines.
So if I can just share what I heard from my neighbors and friends, and a lot of them have to work. They have to work today. The other day they had to work. You always have to work. So that was an issue. And also kind of, how should I say, this type of environment is kind of intimidating in some people. You mean I have to go there and, talk in a way that is like presentable? And so that was kind of a little bit of a fear factor, some of my friends. So, and then also Chair Jackson talked about like kind of distrust a little bit. I mean, was that going to make any difference? I mean, why are we doing this? Was there anything come out of this? So something like that also I experienced with talking with my circle of people.
Yes, and on Monday we had a very passionate speaker regarding disability issues, and had a lot of suggestions as to some things we can do to make it easier for those who have some disabilities to participate in activities such as this, and also other community activities. If there's an event, at the RAC or somewhere else in a park, there are accessibility issues that may come about that are beyond those that the city, the park, the facility may have met all of the requirements, but they may put a stage in if you're sponsoring an event, or some other things that then present some new and different challenges for those who have some disabilities. And as I mentioned earlier, also broadband. It was really emphasized how we do have some challenges with broadband access for some people who are in the unincorporated areas.
And on the issue of location, we talked at length about, this first time out of what would be the best place to try and hold this first event, especially when we were trying to do a hybrid of in-person, online, and all of these things. And in looking at the community center as a possible location, we had some technological issues and concerns about this hybrid model. But did City Hall as a location play a part in people not feeling comfortable to participate in this? Would somewhere out in the community be more comfortable for certain groups of people? We don't know, but we would like to find that out. So as we move forward in the future with future kinds of listening sessions, We don't want what is proven to be a barrier to continue to be a barrier. But this worked out fine for this trial of this hybrid, and hopefully we won't have to deal with this hybrid situation and this mask wearing and all of these things forever. So as we go forward, we can avail ourselves of some of those other location options that might help people feel a little more comfortable in coming to participate in these kinds of sessions. But, you know, we're looking at all of that. We're looking at all of that. But, you know, this was an experiment, and I think we're learning a lot from it. Yes. Anything else on the issue of barriers to today's participation?
Yeah, this is not necessarily a barrier, but it could have been. I just wanted to give a shout out to the city's, I think it's facilities or public works area. But on my street, you know, right behind my, parking, my driveway, yesterday as I was cleaning up, I noticed a hole in the street. And I looked, and wow, I looked down, I can look inside of that hole. And so I made a call and reported it. And within 15 minutes, they had a representative there who evaluated it, and then she called in, a crew. And they spent an hour and a half repairing it. And it was quite a bit of work they had to do to it. But I was saying to myself, that is very impressive, that response and the professionalism that they displayed. They greeted me, they had a great attitude. So they did a really great job at it, and I thank them. So I just want to give a shout out to that group, to that department. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Clay with question 6.
Yes, 6 is, would you be interested in having more dialogue with the Commission on Equity? And we've talked about focus groups, which I think will probably be our next step. So people online want you to think about that, want you to think about, talk to your friends about it. And we have, you can email us at COECI, Shannon, give us the real
email
The email
address.
address is coe@ci.Lacey.wa, that's WA.US.
that one. And also, we have a sign-up sheet in the back of the room. We have online, we have surveys that you can continue to get online and fill out. We have them in Spanish, we have them in Korean right now. So we want to really get your feedback, get your names, your organizations, so that we can connect with you and further our dialogues.
Thank you. Any comment from any other commissioner on that 6th item? And we still see no one from the virtual audience who wants to address us. Is there anything anyone virtually attending would like to share with the commission that doesn't necessarily relate to any of the questions we had prepared here? We'd love to hear from you. Again, we see none. So thank you, Carlos and Jim, for having joined us this afternoon. We appreciate that. That can take us into our closing then, and Commissioner Hedgewood.
Thanks again to our virtual audience for attending with us, and our city representatives from our city government for attending. I just wanted to remind everybody that this is a starting point for the Commission on Equity to engage in community dialogue and figure out how we can best be of service to those that need it most. I would also like to remind everyone that we will continue to provide and improve opportunities for community engagement in the future. Those slips are here at City Hall, and they will remain here until the end of December. If you have a chance to come out and pick ones up, you feel free to complete them at your leisure. The input collected will help guide us with our work that we're doing to continue to provide recommendations to the City Council on creating a more equitable community through action, partnership, support, and advocacy. And with that, is there anything else that our audience members at home or any of those that are present with us would like to share with the commission, or just any comments or statements in general?
Seeing none coming from our virtual audience, and any other comments from our commissioners here? Our staff, Shannon?
Chair Jackson, I'd also just like to make a reminder for all of those who are watching, and then who will also be watching the recordings in the future, that the Commission on Equity does meet once a month, and that is typically on the fourth Monday of every month. And there is an opportunity at every one of those meetings to provide public comment, and it typically occurs at the very beginning of the meeting. I also just want to really quickly express my gratitude for all of your efforts on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Shannon. Seeing no other comments, hearing no other comments, and seeing no other business to come before the commission, then we will conclude this second community input session, and we stand adjourned.